We now have Professor Don Boudreaux, who is chairman of the Department of Economics at George Mason University. Previously, he was the head of the Foundation for Economic Education in Irving. But most importantly, Don wants to let you know that he blogs regularly on cafehayek.com. And as a regular recipient of his sorry.
Okay, no problem. I wish to keep my carbon footprint low. I have no. I'm going to use the computer. It's all just talking. In fact, if I had my brothers, I'd turn the microphone off, just use my voice, so we can be natural. Like many people, some people in this room, most pundits and politicians, and as far as I know, every former vice president of the United States, I am not a climate scientist. I don't know much about climate science. I come to conferences like this and read things in Reason Magazine, scholarly journals like the New York Times. But I honestly am not equipped, except as hopefully an intelligent layman, to assess the science. And so, for purposes of my talk, I am willing, for argument's sake, to grant that global warming is real, it's anthropomorphic in origin, and much of what at least some of the more reasonable pro-global warming advocates proclaim. I am, however, a professional economist, and my respect for the scientific method that my intellectual training gives me distresses me whenever I encounter people such as former Vice President Gore and many other politicians and pundits who are unabashedly, well, they hide it, but they really are, they diss, as we say, the scientific method. They assume that climatology, climate science, if it shows that the Earth is warming, then we, meaning powerful government, must take steps to solve it. And that is an unscientific proposition. It does not, as a matter of science, it does not follow that any steps should be taken to cure global warming, if in fact it is happening, and it certainly doesn't indicate what kind of steps. This sounds radical to some people because if you studied economics, you know that economics has this even in principles of economics, you'll learn that, well, there are such things called negative externalities. That's when people are able to take actions and the full consequences of their actions don't fall upon them. Many of the costs of their actions fall upon others, and so people have an incentive to engage in those actions too frequently. As a matter of principle, I think that's exactly right. It can hardly be denied. And global warming, as it's often portrayed, falls right to that category. The smokestack, the factories and the drivers, the people who use the PowerPoint, they're all causing more carbon emissions, but they're not bearing much of the cost, and so they engage in too much of those activities. So we need a central agent to come along and stop us from doing it, to solve that collective action problem. The problem with that story is that even economics doesn't, as a matter of science, say government should take action to solve externalities. It says that it's possible that government can take action to solve externalities. But what even many economists, I'm sad to say, overlook is that the very process of creating government power and government institutions to solve externalities creates its own set of externalities that would otherwise not exist. When you create a government of whatever kind, the great and glorious government that we have in the US, the wonderful government that they have in Cuba, and anything in between, you empower a handful of persons to take actions that affect millions or at least hundreds of thousands of others. And romantic classic democratic theory notwithstanding, the results of those actions that fall on the millions or hundreds of thousands of people, most of the cost of those actions or the benefits do not ultimately fall on the persons taking the actions. And so when you go into a voting booth, you're voting not only on how you lead your life or how much taxes you pay, you're voting on how much taxes other people pay and how they lead their life. If you're an esteemed member of Parliament or Congress, you get to make decisions for other people, the cost of it, only few of the costs of which fall directly upon you. Now, this is recognized by some of the wiser economists out there that government itself is riven with collective action problems and negative externalities. It's not, however, widely recognized in the general public. And so that's one reason why it does not follow that to prove that global warming exists and that it's anthropomorphic in origin means that we should therefore empower government to solve it. There's another related branch of economics. I'm happy to say it's centered at my home institution, George Mason University, public choice economics, which is a scientific branch of economics, and it shows quite clearly with theory and empirical work that government often misfires, or voters are rationally ignorant, special interest groups unavoidably and invariably have a pernicious and undue influence on the political process. There are inherent knowledge problems in the way politics plays out, and yet, the likes of Al Gore and many other global warming enthusiasts for empowering the government to solve global warming, they just continue to deny the reality of public choice. In fact, I call these people public choice deniers. It's they're presented with evidence, it's overwhelming, and they continue to deny. They pretend it doesn't exist. It's really shameful and highly unscientific. Another aspect. So I always take the opportunity to expose public choice deniers when I encounter them. A final. I don't want to take too much time because I know time flies by quickly. Another way that economics as a science helps to shed light on the global warming debate, and the previous two speakers have done a really nice job in showing that, actually mustering evidence to show what happens to the larger atmosphere with changes in economic growth and that sort of thing. Let's look a little bit lower and see what happens at the individual level. And I'm being serious here. This insight first came to me about 8 or 9 years ago while I was standing at a urinal at LaGuardia Airport. It's true. It was the first time, maybe it was a little more than that, it was the first time I saw a self-flush urinal. And I was amazed. It was like a kid, incredible. And I thought, this is just one more way that our individual lives are cleaned by capitalism. These kinds, and I'm quite serious here, these kinds of small events, and no one gets excited about a self-flush urinal anymore. They're all over the place. But these kinds of small events that make our daily lives cleaner are so common, they happen so often, we take them for granted. And it truly distresses me that environmentalists, whether the issue is global warming or whatever, they conduct the discussion, not only as if government will invariably solve the problem wisely, but they conduct the discussion as if the benefits of capitalism are not real. And I find that very distressing. And so when I walked away from that urinal at LaGuardia Airport, my mind it was a life-changing experience for me. Because I started looking around the world, just out of my daily existence, seeing the ways that capitalism, in very unsung ways, makes each of our lives cleaner, more pleasant, more sanitary, less hazardous, safer, extending our life expectancies, reducing our risks of bacterial infections and things of that sort. I have, in fact, just to stick with the bathroom theme, I went to the men's room again, just before coming into this room, and this is don't worry, it's not used, this is just the hand drying towel that comes from the machine. You all seen these things before. You know how you get this towel? You wave your hand in front of a little infrared thing and it comes out. You don't have to touch it, right? You don't have to touch anything. You can walk into a bathroom, like in an American airport or hotels, right? You don't have to touch a door because it's designed now so that you walk through this little zigzag thing, so there's no door you have to touch. You use the bathroom, you don't have to touch the faucets anymore, you stick your hand in there, the water comes out automatically. You gotta press the soap, I guess. And then you wash your hands, you wave your hand over the dispenser, the paper towel comes out. You can go into a bathroom, not touch anything but yourself. That's really clean. I mean, seriously, imagine what, or remember what life was like 30 or 40 years ago. That was impossible. Just this morning, and if those of you who stayed in this hotel, you probably have noticed this. I think this is an example of clean by capitalism. Here's a little 1 cup coffee thing, right? and it's nicely, it's wrapped up sanitarily, you open it, you pop it into the coffee thing, get your coffee, then you throw it right away. Right? People, oh, throwaway society. Well, throwaway society is keeping our lives cleaner. One of my favorite examples of how capitalism cleans our personal environment are these things, little Listerine breath strips. They've become part of my food group now. It keeps my breath clean, and by the way, eliminates some germs that cause bad breath in my mouth. But think about the roads, the streets here in Manhattan. Quite seriously, you know, the automobile is the bête noire of many environmentalists. Talk about a big carbon footprint. No question, automobiles emit carbon dioxide, that cannot be denied. But before the automobile, what was life like? Most of you have heard the story. It's not hard to reflect. We just don't reflect on it because it's not part of the world we live in. The streets were full of horses. Horses, they too use the bathroom in public, and especially in the summer, flies swarm. And so the streets were full of animal manure, swarming flies. When it rained, of course, it turned into a nasty sludge. When it didn't rain, it turned into a dust that got into your lungs. By the way, the mundane and unsung scream, just the scream, that wasn't invented until the 1890s. And so it wasn't until the 1890s when people even opened their windows to let fresh air in the summer and keep the flies out at the same time. Refrigeration, automobiles, indoor plumbing, medicines like antibiotics, air conditioning, washers and dryers that keep our clothing clean, mills that make clothing that can be cleaned regularly. Most of the fruits, I would go so far as to say most of the fruits of industrial capitalism, the system that many of the environmentalists love to hate, that system has bestowed upon us a world that by historical standards, even by the standards of say 50 or 60 years ago, is incredibly sanitary and clean and less hazardous. This doesn't mean that, or recognizing this doesn't mean that if we discover a problem with global warming or some other environmental problem, that we therefore should not take steps. Economists understand the proposition of the margin. However, it does mean that if people, there's cause for pause when people so diss industrial capitalism as if it is only a source of hazard and danger, if they don't understand that it's chiefly a source of prosperity and long life. Thank you.